But Paul says, don't seek revenge. Don't do it in any form. Now, why? Why no revenge? If it's so natural, so common, why no revenge? Well, this is where we need to understand how the bitter ear hears the command in verse 19, do not avenge yourselves. How does the bitter ear hear this verse? This is how many people hear the verse. This is not a verse. This is a verse I made up, okay? But this is how we hear it. Romans 12:19. Friends, do not avenge yourselves because God is loving. So let it go. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go. Let it go. Turn away and slam the door. And see, this is where our theology moves from the Bible into the Disney world, the fantasy world. And we say, oh yeah, okay, so why should I, what's the argument here? God is so loving, so just let it go. But I'm telling you, if you believe this, you're going to be a very bitter person. You'll be a very bitter person. See, what comes after this, do not avenge yourself, the reasoning, how you answer that question is going to predict if you're going to be a bitter person. Because if you read it, brothers or friends, do not avenge yourselves because God is so loving, you're going to be bitter your whole life. You will be bitter. But that's not what Paul says. See, bitter people, what's going on with bitter people so often, not always, but often, is that to genuinely forgive the people who do evil to you, you actually have to let the evil go. You stop holding it against them. You release them from their debt. You actually have to let that go. But see, when you let it go, you release people from the debt, it feels like what you're saying is, it's not a big deal what you did to me. And so, in the attempt to hold on to your dignity, you hold on to the offense. Because what you're saying is what was done to me is not okay. Because if it's okay, then that means that the way I feel and the hurt that I've experienced is not a big deal. No, but it is a big deal. So we hold on to it. And so if you hear God saying, don't avenge yourselves because God is so loving, you're going to be bitter. You will be bitter. Because you'll say, oh, God is so loving. He doesn't actually care about what I've gone through. He says, just let it go. No, but that's not how God forgives. And that's not what the Bible tells us. So look at the reasoning in verse 19. Friends, do not avenge yourselves. Why? It's a big why here. Instead, so don't avenge yourself. So what do? Leave room for God's wrath. Leave room for God's wrath. Because it is written, vengeance belongs to me. I will repay, says the Lord. See, God sees the evil done to you, and he hates that evil more than you do. When evil is done to you, when you are mistreated, God sees it, and he hates that evil more than you do. And God says, look at me. He says, look at me, look at me. Let me deal with it. That's what he says. Friends, don't avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for God's wrath. Because it is written, vengeance belongs to me. I will repay. So don't seek vengeance. See, when you seek vengeance, you're trying to be God. That's what he means when he says, leave room for God's wrath. It means get out of God's seat. Get out of his chair. You're sitting in the wrong seat. You can't sit in that seat and bring about justice. When you are offended, it is very difficult to divide up justice perfectly. I mean, what is justice when you're offended? Man, so often we go way overboard. And so he says, no. Listen, God says, get out of my seat. I will bring about justice. I see it, and I will repay. And when you believe this verse, the entire calculation of your heart changes. How does it change? Well, first, I don't have to fight for my dignity anymore. I don't have to. God sees. He sees. The Lord knows. There have been so many times over the years where maybe someone has intentionally done something bad to me, or maybe unintentionally, I don't know. But I just say, Lord, you saw that, didn't you? You see it. And just knowing that the Lord sees it, it changes my internal calculation dramatically. The next result is that it should produce humility. Because when I look at a person and I'm mad at them, I'm angry at them, and I want justice, then I think about what justice is. If God gave that person actual justice, they would die and go to hell forever. And there's a part of me that says, okay, wait a second. If you see the evil that they did to me, then God, you see the evil that I've done to others. And if you gave me justice, I would die and go to hell. And so what looking to the Lord does is it actually creates a level playing ground between you and the person who sinned against you. To be bitter requires self-righteousness. See, to be bitter, if you're going to be bitter towards someone, what that means is that you have to be better than them in your eyes. You have to be above them. But see, when you look to the Lord and you see the holiness of God, what it does, looking at the Lord, is it creates a level ground between you and the person who sinned against you. There's no room for self-righteousness. And so it ought to humble us. It ought to humble us. Just even thinking about how my sin demands death and how God will deal with every sin that has ever been committed with the punishment of death, either hell forever or the cross of Christ. Where God does not look at sin and say it's no big deal, just whatever. He doesn't do that. He says, no, all sin must be dealt with by death, either the cross or hell forever.